Kristi Kay. Welcome to Business Life After Hours, a podcast that takes a deep dive into real-life topics at the intersection of business and life. After the workday ends, that's where we pick up. Our topic on this Business Life After Hours podcast is why a career in Congress matters. This podcast episode is for the advocacy-minded, for those who are curious about the life of a congressman, and for those who want a deeper understanding of leading issues facing the U.S. today. My guest is Congressman Bob Latta from the great state of Ohio. He's been in Washington, D.C., representing Ohio's 5th District since 2007. And it's the same seat, in fact, that his father held decades prior. He advocates for many issues impacting the USA's future, including energy, telecommunications, and healthcare. We have so much to talk about, Congressman, so welcome to Business Life After Hours.
Well, I greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here, for all you do for the great state of Ohio, for its residents, businesses, constituents, as well as our great country. So, first question, Congressman Latta, why a career in public service? Was it a calling for you?
Well, I think you're absolutely correct when you say I think public service is a calling. Something my dad taught me a long time ago. There are two types of people that get into public service, and he told me there are those who want to be politicians and those who want to be public servants. And a politician he described as someone who takes from the people they represent for their own benefit, while a public servant gives of themselves to the people that they represent. And so I've been blessed being able to represent so many people from the county level, state level, now the federal level. And I believe that, we all have to do everything we possibly can to give back to this country.
Mm-hmm. That's so well put. And I think about it all the time, too, the return on investment, so to speak, for being a congressman. And I think about those of you who do give your lives and who have those right intentions, if you will, because you take a lot of heat from the general public, from constituents day in and day out. So how do you kind of navigate that world, and how do you stay upbeat and positive when it comes to those other kinds of kind of general public constituent concerns that maybe get a little bit out of hand sometimes?
Well, really, first and foremost, I consider every day a blessing. I'm blessed to be able to do this job, and I thank the good Lord and the people I represent for letting me do it. And the other part is, your first part of the question is, sometimes when things, people get upset and things like that. But, that's the world that we live in. It's our nation. It's our democracy. It's our Constitution. So, I see it as, those people exercising that right. And sometimes you think, what, if I'm doing my job right, they get to do be able to get out there and, express how they feel. So I don't really see it as a negative. It's more of a positive then.
Mm-hmm. And you're so intuitive anyway, and you have a great way of really hearing what your constituents want and need and communicating that. So I feel like for you, that's the gift that we get from you, is you're able to assimilate some of those concerns and really take action. So for that, we are so appreciative of all you do. Do you ever feel like in that regard, kind of in that same vein, that you can't do enough and there's always so much more work to be done? And kind of what is it that keeps you awake at night?
Well, first and foremost, if you think that your day is done and you've got everything accomplished, you're fooling yourself. We have so much work we need to do, and you have to be looking over the horizon. And I do serve on the Energy and Commerce Committee, and the great thing about serving on Energy and Commerce, we have such broad jurisdiction, more bills come out of our committee than any other committee that are signed into law. So if you think about energy, telecommunications, healthcare, commerce, environment, those all fall underneath of us in other areas that I work on. And one of the things when you sit on that dais in Energy and Commerce, you're looking over the horizon 5 to 10 years. You're dealing with the innovators, the entrepreneurs out there that are going to change the way we do things, not only in this country but around the world, with their inventions and what they bring forth. Mm-hmm. So that's why I want to always make sure that we're always on that cutting edge, that we're out there always in front. Because if you think you're satisfied, you're behind. So, when you think about things you worry about at night, well, I worry about our national debt at $30 trillion. I worry about, because years ago I served on the Budget Committee, and one of the things I worry about every day is that, unfortunately, by the year 2030, we're going to pay $1 trillion just to pay interest on the debt. We're not going to be paying down the debt. It'll be the third highest number that we're going to be paying right off the top every year, and we're probably going to end up borrowing money just to pay the interest back. And so it's not going to affect just future generations, but this generation right now. So we've got work to do.
Yeah, we do. Yes, we do. Well, as a girl from Ohio myself, I know this state's beauty and the wonder and its offerings, and especially now I look at some of the other parts of the country, and I see droughts and fires and floods, and I think about Ohio, and I think about our Great Lakes. And the weather we have, the agriculture, the food supply, farmers, farmland, and all in all, it's a fabulous place and a great state to live. So what would you say are Ohio's greatest assets and strengths, past, present, and future? And then I think, while you're talking about that as well, I'm intrigued by your thoughts on the Great Lakes and specifically some of the water concerns that we have.
Right. Well, I always tell everybody our greatest asset are the people that we have in the state of Ohio.
I love that.
And I want to keep everybody there. I want to make sure that you get if you get your education in Ohio, you stay in Ohio, you find jobs in Ohio. We have such great opportunity. And when I look at our state and our diversity that we have from manufacturing to agriculture and everything in between, I look at my district. I have 86,000 manufacturing jobs, if not the largest in the state of Ohio. And at the same time, I have the largest farm income-producing district in the state. So we have a lot of things going hand in hand. So it's really important that we show this to our younger people in the state of Ohio. You're absolutely right. You look at across the country, and when you see droughts and fires and things like that, that's something we don't have. I say, okay, granted, we don't always have the greatest weather.
Not going to lie.
What we always say is, if you're not happy with the weather, wait 15 minutes. It could be changing. But
that's so Ohio. Yes.
But again, though, we have 4 seasons, and you get to see it. But I really want to make sure that we do have these opportunities for people to stay in Ohio, that they don't say they have to go someplace else. Because again, I talk to my colleagues from around the country, and they're in drought. They have no water. And here, we have the abundance. We have, our Great Lake, Lake Erie, and we have everything that works around it, and the great benefit that we get from tourism. And you name all of the other assets and all the communities that are able to draw water from the lake that help their communities. But it's important that we look at our assets, and I think that sometimes people always want to look at the negative. I think you ought to look at the positives and say, we have all this going for us, and that's what we need to be doing.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. And I know keeping the water quality up and really being intentional every day is something that you're very focused on. So, keeping Lake Erie and alga blooms and that type of thing really in a healthy place, I know is a challenge for you as well.
Well, in 2014, when we had that massive alga bloom, I'll never forget, because we had votes late that night or the night before when we found out about what happened with the city of Toledo in the water. And I remember getting off the plane at 7 o'clock and finding out, and we spent just literally 24 hours a day for 3 straight days in meetings. And, I think it showed the great cooperative effort that we can do in Ohio. That, from the local level to the state level to the federal level, we had everybody at the table. And from those meetings, then I had legislation, which was the Drinking Water Protection Act, that came out of it, that was signed into law to make sure that we do have good drinking water, not just in Lake Erie, but across the country. Mm-hmm. But we want to make sure that we protect our assets, but we all need just to work together.
Mm-hmm. Now, if you had to pick one passion project, like through all of your years in public service, that's really stood out for you to fight for or to change something or to improve something, what would that be? Like, for example, if I said to you, you can only talk about one issue right now, what would that be and why?
Well, that's a tough one, because I'm one that's not pigeonholed into a certain area. Yep. And again, serving on the committee that I serve on, it's fantastic that you get to do so many things. But I can think of. I hate to say I can't think of just but for in particular, I was given a piece of legislation a good number of years ago. It was called Track and Trace, and the problem is how do you make sure that a drug, when it's manufactured, till the time it gets down to the corner drugstore, hasn't been adulterated, hasn't been made into another type of a product that's not safe for human consumption. And so, I remember having the best thing I ever bought for my office is 8 folding chairs. I had like 15 people in my office from all over the industries. And I said, look, we got to get this thing done because they've been working on this for 10 years. And so I pretty much laid it out to everybody that, what we can't think of is that I'm going to get 100% of what you want, because that never is going to work. Mm-hmm. But we worked it through, and before the end of the Congress, that piece of legislation had become law. Yeah, but it's really just I like to take legislation and work it, and I've always enjoyed that. But it's also, you just have to bring people together, and sometimes you don't want to think that something's going to have to be into the next Congress. You want to keep moving. Mm-hmm. But, I've been fortunate from working on that. Other issues like autonomous vehicles or rural broadband, more spectrum, tax issues with death tax. I've just been very, very fortunate. I've also have a fantastic office staff that work right along with me to get these things accomplished.
You are doing such important work, especially when you're talking about things like that track and trace, all of the above, autonomous vehicles. I know you're working collaboratively with the state of Michigan to do some of that in terms of a legislative project there. But what's one of the top questions that constituents are most concerned about? Is it like potholes in the road? Or is
it really comes down to right now, the number one issue we're hearing from people from back home, it's inflation, it's been fuel prices. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And, when I was at the grocery store a couple of weeks ago one weekend, and I was walking through the meat department. I just happened to look down. It had a pound and a half of bacon was $12.
Oh, yeah.
And so you look at bread prices, and I go to the grocery store, I see it, and when we were having the issues with supply chain, that people were going, and I'll never forget, people know who I am, mm-hmm. And I remember going to one section of the store, and the shelves were empty, and I had 2 people come up to me within about 1 minute and asked and said to me, "Bob, do you see that these shelves are empty?" And I said, "Yeah, they're empty." Mm-hmm. And but we need to make sure that our supply chain works, and because again, when you think about what we have in this country, we have to also make sure that we bring a lot of the supply chain we found out from COVID, that our supply chain was really stretched. And maybe we're not going to be able to have everything in this country, but we need to make sure that we have it with trusted trading partners, that we can make sure that we can have everything on those shelves for everybody at all times.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now, you've been really active in the world of energy, as we've said earlier. So where do you feel we stand as a nation in terms of energy efficiencies, oil, self-sustainability as a whole? Are we strong? Can we compete globally on this stage?
Well, number one, when it comes on the energy side, I just look back 25, 30 years ago. We were told in this country we had no natural gas, we had no oil to really speak of, and that we were going to end up being just dependent on OPEC. And for years, that's what we heard. But back when the Republicans took control of Congress, we moved through legislation. Again, we want to make sure that the environment's safe and sound and clean. But we were able to move through legislation that made the United States the number one natural gas producer in the world. And on any day, we could outproduce Saudi Arabia or Russia in oil production. And so, that made us strong and made sure we kept our jobs here. We weren't dependent on any other country. That we also made sure that we could take care of ourselves. Mm-hmm. I also think about where we are today with what President Biden has done. He's reversing that, and we don't want to. When he goes to Saudi Arabia or prior to the Ukraine war, asking the Russians to increase production, that's wrong. We want to keep we want to keep the United States strong. I also think that when it comes to energy, you have to think about other areas like advanced nuclear. We have all this happening right now that I'm involved on with advanced nuclear, that we could be going forward with that right now. And at the same time, on the alternatives, because years back the Republicans came up with what we call an all-of-the-above energy policy. So it's to take everything that we had out there, but then take all of the alternatives out there, energies, and bring them into the mix. And so you can make yourself extremely strong.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, let's talk about Congress and what is it really like to be in session in Congress? And when you talk about some of those, whether it's, the bipartisan issues or, the personalities, some of them appear to be incorrigible, difficult. Do you find it invigorating and enjoyable to have that banter and hopefully come to consensus? Or tell us all about that.
Well, I get that question a lot from people, and
Okay.
I said, here, and I said, this is what usually happens. If you look at the huge number of bills that move through Congress, they're bipartisan.
Mm-hmm.
What you're looking at a lot of times are 5 or 6 really hot button issues, and that's really what you hear about on the news. I know I've worked with a friend of mine, a Democrat from California, on improving our grid, upgrading it, making sure that the grid's secure, cybersecurity issues on it. I've worked with a Democrat from Vermont that on issues with the Internet of Things or rural broadband. Another Democrat from Iowa, and we used to always joke because I remember somebody asked, how do you guys work together? And I said, well, Dave and I come from a state with 4 letters with 3 vowels. He came from Iowa, and I'm from Ohio. But we look at it that we find those issues that we can work together on, but we understand we're not going to agree on these other issues. But we want to make sure, because like in the Energy and Commerce Committee a few years ago when I saw the statistic, 93% of the bills that moved through committee were bipartisan. And when those bills came to the floor, interestingly enough, they passed with 94% in a bipartisan manner. So you have those hot button issues out there that you just have to understand that we're never going to agree on these things with one another, but all those issues that we can work on, we work on together.
Mm-hmm. I love that, and I think that sort of clears up a misconception that that there's so much divisiveness that we can't kind of find that middle ground, and really thinking through how well-intentioned you truly are, and really trying to make the right decisions for the right reasons. So I think as citizens, from our vantage point, sometimes we don't always see that. So it's nice to hear that from you. So in terms of your time, what percentage of time do you spend, and most Congress people spend, in their district versus Washington, D.C., versus, say, like out in the public domain, meeting with influencers, setting agendas, researching? How do you split all that? How do you do all of that?
Well, usually the House is in session either like Monday to Thursday or Tuesday to Friday that we're in session. And so I always figure that a session day, is a short day is 12 hours. It could be 13 to 15 hours that you might be working when you're here in Washington, because there's so much work you got to get done. It's either committee work, office work, or meetings. Mm-hmm. Back in the district, I'm one. I think I'm close to 1,300 meetings in Ohio in the last 9 years since they started keeping track of me.
Wow.
But I have to go back and find out from the time I got here. But when I'm home, I just get in the car and drive because, again, I have a very unique district. And so, we're blessed with all of our higher ed institutions in the district. Again, with manufacturing, when you think that you have the largest food processing plant in the world at Campbell's Soup and mm-hmm. Napoleon in your district, and Souder Manufacturing in Archbold, or Central Foundry in Defiance, and you have First Solar in Wood County, and I can just kind of go down the entire list from glass to steel, and just down to small innovators out there that might have 10 people working for them. But everybody's out there doing an absolutely incredible job. And so that's why I spend a lot of my time is out with them mm-hmm. to see what they're doing and to help them, in a lot of cases, navigate, the unfortunate regulatory scheme that goes on. And I've never heard anybody out there say they're against regulations, but they all say, just give us regulations we can live with.
Mm-hmm. Right, yes. Well, so really, I'm gleaning from that you're really never off the clock, so to speak. We talk about business life after hours. There's this kind of a gray area there. You're kind of always on the clock, I feel like. But have you ever had in your career something really difficult that you've had to manage or battle or endure that has really made your life maybe one of the biggest challenges you've ever faced? What would that be?
I guess going back when our daughters were young and I was in the state legislature, and I never wanted to miss all the different things that they had going on. And I know years ago when our oldest daughter started T-ball, I think she was 6 years old, and I was told, no problem, all the T-ball games were going to be on Saturday. Well, we get the schedule, they're Wednesday.
Oh no! You're like, no,
so,
that can't
so
happen.
yeah, so it turned out that I would drive to Columbus, do everything I had to do that day, but at a certain time I was able to usually get home, and I was probably the only parent sitting out there in a dress shirt and a tie undone. Yeah,
But you were
sitting in the
there.
bleachers.
You were
But
there.
I wanted to make sure I was there for our daughters, because my wife and I wanted to do everything we possibly wanted when they were growing up to be there, and they were in everything from t-ball to fast pitch to CYO volleyball to band to quiz bow and cheerleading. I mean, everything. But you wanted to be there, and as a parent, then especially in school activities, you're expected to help. So it was helping in the concession stands and everything else, but we wanted to be there for them.
Well, good for you that you were present for those fabulous young women in your life, and I know you've got some with Marcia, your wife, and your daughters. You have some strong women in your life, and they're wonderful. So, want to circle back to we started to talk a little bit about this, about why a career in public service as a congressman matters. So, decades from now, as you look back on your career in Congress, what return on investment or what impact do you hope then will be revealed?
That's a good question, because when I get to, and I'm blessed, I get to speak to kids that are in kindergarten through people working on their PhDs. But it's also when I'm at the schools talking to government classes, or when kids are standing on the Capitol steps. And I think this is one of the things I've always told the kids is this. In 5 years or 10 years, don't ever get up in the morning, look in the mirror, and say two words, I wish. Because if you say I wish, you didn't do something. And so you got to make every day count. And so by being able to and being given the ability to do this job, I want to make sure that I always look in that mirror and go, I'm working to get things done, and I'm not putting things off, because when you're in a legislative process, especially in the House of Representatives, it's only a 2-year term. The clock starts ticking the second you're sworn in, so you don't have a lot of time to get things done. So it's always trying to get everything done as much as you possibly can, and never look back and regret saying to yourself, well, I wish I could have done that or done this, because usually if you say that, you didn't get it accomplished or even try.
Yep, absolutely. I love that. That is like living with no regret also. And I wanted to talk to you as we kind of wrap this up, talk to you a little bit more about how we as constituents in your kind of like in your world, how do you like us to use your expertise? How do you like your constituents to work with you? What can we be doing to really impart your wisdom, your knowledge, your action, and all that ability you have to help us to kind of make a difference in our lives?
Well, it's important. I think the contact, and I try to be out all the time so I can have that personal contact with people. But, in the age we live in with emails, a lot more people are emailing today. One of the things I've always told folks is that, I review every legislative letter that leaves this office. I sign every constituent letter in the district that goes out every day, because I want to see what's going on. So I know exactly if we're having more VA problems almost instantly by the number of letters that are going out, that we need to hear from people. One thing I always tell folks is that these chains that sometimes they say, here, press this button. If everybody sends some automated thing out, it's not that same as that personal story as to how a law or regulation is affecting them. And so I think that hearing that personal story and how they're being affected by an agency or department of the federal government is so important, and that's what we work from.
Quick after hours question: what's your favorite hobby when you're not working? If there is such thing as not working.
Well, in the summertime right now, it's trying to keep the yard mowed.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, an outdoors guy. And you're kind of an outdoorsy person anyway, correct?
Oh, I love the outdoors.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I like to hunt, and but you only have a very, very limited time you can do that. But I think that just every day you just got to get so much work done, and I have almost like sheets of things I write down of everything I need to do, I try to whittle those down then.
Yes, great. You're a list guy. Well, listen, we have come to the end of this Business Life After Hours podcast, and I'm feeling extremely motivated right now. Congressman Latta, thank you so much. And give us a takeaway nugget, if you would, for our listeners as it ties to kind of the impact in terms of Congress and why a career in Congress matters to you, to all of us.
Well, first and foremost, we live in the greatest country on earth. I always tell the kids that because as they're working through school and government classes or being here in Washington, that this is the greatest in the world. You know, this is why everybody wants to come here, not only for the personal freedoms, but also because, you know, look where most of the inventions, so many of the world's inventions are from, the United States. Why? Because people see this as the land of opportunity. Mm-hmm. And we always want to make sure we keep it that way. And that's one of the things I work forward to every day when I get to the office or if I'm in the district. That's my job, to make sure that the American people can experience the American dream.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I feel like my takeaway nugget, too, for our After Hours listeners is really that, you know, choosing this life of public service, it's really a calling. It's difficult. It's rewarding. But we can all respect and communicate with our congressmen and women, recognize that you all you're bringing so much passion and knowledge, and you can really impact our lives every day. And I love what you said about every day counts, and don't say I wish and have no regrets. I love that. So Congressman Latta, if our Business Life After Hours listeners would like more information on your work, your appearances, your information, legislation, how can they find you?
Well, you know, there's several things you can do. We have our district offices in Bowling Green, Defiance, and also in Findlay. They can go online and get the addresses there. But or latta.house.gov, they can get a hold of me if they want to do something online. But it's like I said, I just need to hear from people because I tell all new members when I talk with them, I say always remember that we all have the same first name. We're representatives. We represent our districts, and so that means those people back home.
Thank you so much, Congressman Latta. It has been invigorating. It's been enlightening. Thanks for your efforts every single day to be one of our greatest advocates. So it's great to have you on Business Life After Hours.
Well, thank you very much, and have a wonderful day.
Business Life After Hours is hosted and produced by Kristi K. Audio engineering, production, and editing by Chris Pfeiffer. Be sure to join Kristi for her award-winning television series, Business Life 360, the third Thursday of the month on WGTE HD or at WGTE.org/B360. Business Life After Hours is a production of WGTE Public Media.